Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod round two with Alan Zhao. Alan is a co-founder at Warmly. I'm using Warmly myself, cool app on Zoom. Plus, they pivoted not so long ago into converting website visitors instantly, which is an interesting and successful pivot. Apparently, we're going to discuss about that today. This pod is brought to you by podpar.com. If you want to start, scale, monetize your own podcast, it's brought to you by Quality of Mind as well. If you want to have better focus, memory, and drive, a lot of top CEOs and entrepreneurs use that nootropic for better performances. Alan, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you've been up to since last time we spoke.
Yeah, so I'm Alan, one of the co-founders at Warmly. I was the CTO for 3 years, and then I ran the pivot, which is converting website traffic and automating the follow-up to high intent prospects or in market to buy your product over LinkedIn, email, and live chat. So I ran that pivot, and then I moved into sales to make sure I could sell it, and then I pivoted myself over into marketing to make sure we could build a category around it. Now I'm in customer success because we have a body of customers and we need to protect this revenue.
So tell me about the pivot. We talked about this other company, R&B or whatever they're called, Bad Sign. I can't remember their name. They probably need to rebrand. And Apollo also had that feature recently. Apollo is only on the company level. It's not precisely at the visitor level. It's just this person at this company. Tell me about that because it seems everyone's doing that nowadays, but it seems that also it's a humongous TAM. And the last but here would be that why isn't WordPress or Shopify or Webflow, why aren't they doing that?
Yeah, I'm not sure about Shopify and Webflow. Maybe their primary focus is probably more on like building websites. And then our primary focus is on making sure that you capture buying intent. And one of the best buying intent signals is when someone visits your website. I think people started to realize that 6sense, Demandbase, some of these bigger companies that have like bid stream data for all the marketers out there, which is basically when someone clicks on an ad and then you can de-anonymize the company and then you see that this company was looking for this particular thing just because they clicked on it, but you don't know who clicked on it. And so they surge intent scores. Anyways, for all these reasons that this third-party intent where someone might be in market because they read something on an ad or they were looking through a Wall Street Journal article, it's too far removed. But if someone visits your site and you know they visited your site and they are looking at key pages, this is without question an intent signal and a very strong one at that, especially if you have high traffic. So these days, I think the market's become like very inundated with all these email outreach, cold calls, and you're trying to find the signal from the noise. So where should you aim better with all your SDRs? And then website signal is a very strong indicator of interest.
What would be other buy intent that has grabbed your attention lately? We have, for example, if they're going at X conference, if they're growing, if they've got funded, what are buying intents that would signal a strong interest in buying your services or products?
I think job change is one that uh, we're building out. Like someone should change jobs. They liked your tool before they understand your product, and it's just a matter of if you are first in line. That's one of the strongest signals. A lot of companies are doing that. And also job postings. There's so much gold in job postings. Like, first of all, the role that they're hiring for. So you know that with this role, you can associate to your product. You can look at the reason that they're hiring for this role. And so a lot of things that need to be automated that comes with this role, maybe your service offers that. And the tech stack of the role. So it's like this treasure trove of data on job postings that people just put out there freely, publicly that you can scrape. I think that's without question one of the best signals of buying intent because they're in the market for this role that they need to fulfill that your tool might already automate or solve for.
Right. And what signals do you have on your end that this pivot has been successful for you? And also any pivoting lessons for us? Like how do you actually execute a pivot and make it on the other side alive?
Yeah, I'll say that we're primarily focused on website visitors. So we can de-anonymize at the company and contact level. Contact is the unique one, actually. So we can tell you without people having to do anything, the people who are coming to your site. And then we have a host of other ways to basically find more and increase coverage and accuracy. And then the other signal we're working on is job change tracking, but we're going to expand to others as well. Now about the pivot, we had to do that because we realized we were solving a problem that wasn't deep enough and our market wasn't large enough. So we used to do this name tags on Zoom when Zoom had 300 million daily active users. But then the world went back into the office, and then Zoom started to stop prioritizing the Zoom App Store, and a bunch of things happened. So we needed to shift focus. I basically, my co-founder and I, Karina and I, we went into the market and we filtered who are all the Series B companies that raised in the past 3 years. And we just went through, looked at the website, analyzed like why did these guys raise? What's hot? What could we potentially pivot into? Eventually we narrowed down the list, like sales space is still the place to be because we were heading into a recession at the time. We could tell this was back in June of 2022. And then by October of 2022 is when we started building. So we narrowed down the list. We looked at the products out there and we realized that there was one product in particular. And it was basically like you could chat with someone who's on the site and then you could video call them and then you would know who they're. So what we're doing is actually not that novel. I mean, this stuff has been done before. There was already a market out there for it. The market just there was no category king for this type of intent-based orchestration, outreach, and then right time, right place, everything orchestrated perfectly. But there were already products that were gaining traction. And so when we see some of these companies raising like 150 million bucks in 3 years, we're like, okay, there's definitely something here. But when you talk to any of the customers out there that we typically talk to, sales and marketing executives, they're like, oh, I've never heard of that company before. Oh, that's so cool. Really, I didn't know you could do that. And so that's like there's a wave that's coming, and we wanted to catch that wave. So we rode that wave, and it's kind of what led us to where we are today, actually.
And how does that product market fit feels different from the last one you potentially had on Zoom? Like, how do you know that you're onto something now?
Uh, Partially because the product is at least the language, the value proposition is there, and the proof is in the pudding. Like we got to 1 million in revenue in a year, and we're gonna try to hit 7 million by the end of next year. So those are our projections. So we know the demand's there for something like this intent-based orchestration platform for sales teams, and because the market's already established, since there were already incumbents in place, then we kind of know that we can grow into that because that market exists. And then we're just taking that market. Those guys that operate in Salesforce, we're just going to be over here in HubSpot. And HubSpot is a very big market in and of itself, but we can also move up to the Salesforce playing field if we wanted to as well. So yeah, one of the big things is just confirming that the market exists, and that's one of the hardest questions to answer typically.
Right. Tell me about the AI part. Interesting thing I see on your website. Yeah, there's ChatGPT here. There's the classic 6sense and Clearbit and Bambora. Like, how do you use AI to better identify the website traffic?
Yeah, it's mostly actually in the outreach right now. The outreach is like if someone visits the website, the classic chatbot drift would just say, hey, pick one of these selections, do you want to talk to a salesperson? Do you want to book a meeting now? Drop your email off. It's very robotic. Here with our AI chatbot, we're actually proactively reaching out on behalf of the rep. Like we know who's on the site. We often know who the person is on the site. If that person owns a specific account, we can reach out on behalf of that person, say the SDR AE. And then once the prospect responds, we Slack notify the AE or the SDR who's responsible for that account or contact, and then they would jump in and basically take over. So if you have 50,000 people who visit a month, there's a percentage of those who are actually in market to buy. There's a percentage of those that if you had reached out to them personally, they would have responded to you because they wanted a question answered. Instead, you didn't. Instead, you had a chatbot that greeted them and they went to a competitor because the competitor was faster. So this is all about speed to lead, personalization, and focus. And having the AI allows us to synthesize all the information from your CRM, all the information about who they are, the company, segment, and then outreach with the right message, which tends to be actually pretty simple.
How do you get your clients nowadays? What does your outreach look like?
50% of it comes from inbound, so pretty heavy on marketing, although we don't have a very large marketing budget. And then our sales team is growing. I think we're at like over 10 salespeople now. It grows by the day, including SDRs. So half inbound, half outbound. And then I can talk more about the marketing side of things because I used to run that.
Yeah, tell me a bit more about that. I'd also be interested in learning about like your outbound method.
Sure. So I can speak more about the marketing. We first started off, which is once you started entering the space, it was a red hot ocean, which basically means that like there were a lot of competitors in there, sales tech, super competitive, and then we were a nobody. And so the first thing we needed to do is make a splash and then really key in on our core differentiation. So there are competitors out there like, 6sense, demand based, Drift, Qualified, Intercom, all these existing tools that people understand. And we went head to head against them in deals. They would always say like, "Oh, you're just Drift, but cheaper," or "You're just 6sense, but can't do this." And so we needed to carve out our own category. So off the Series A announcement back in October 2022, that was considered our lightning strike. If anyone's ever read the book Play Bigger, this is about how to create a category. And so you need the key commercial insight that makes you very different about how you see the world, and then how to deliver your customers to salvation. That narrative needs to exist. And then you need to deliver it and distribute it to all the people that need to know about it. And so that was our Series A announcement. We did the Series A, and we basically went from like almost no website traffic to like 30,000 a month, for the new site and the new product. And then we 10x inbound from like I want to say like 5 or 6 a month to 120 a month after the first 2 months. This was coming out of the holidays in January. And then now we're much larger than that. And so inbound significantly increased because we just, for one day we took over LinkedIn. We got all the influencers we know to write about us, to talk about us. And we did this whole LinkedIn takeover campaign in addition to the Series A announcement. And so for one day, just the spike of what's Warmly? Oh, Warmly does this. Have you heard about Warmly? Warmly, Warmly, Warmly. And then we basically fed off the echoes of that for the next quarter. That's why we had to figure out other things.
That LinkedIn takeover thing, take me through the steps and how you orchestrated that.
Yeah, so we found out who all the biggest voices in the space were, and luckily for us, we kind of knew them one way or another, and then we got intro to other people. I'd also gone to Scott Leese's Surf and Sail program in Costa Rica, and Scott Leese is a pretty big influence in the sales space, and got to meet a lot of sales folks there. And then organically, we just kind of reached out, talk to a person, and then immediately what I do is, hey, can I get your number? I want to help amplify you on LinkedIn. And then I use this tool called Letter Drop, which allows me to drop 30 likes from our companies on any LinkedIn post with just click buttons. So it's very easy for them to be like, hey, can you amplify this post? I'm like, sure, I'll amplify it. Drop 30 likes, drop 30 likes. I did this like every single day. I have a list of like 100 people on DMs. That was before. I think it's probably like 150, almost 200 now. And anytime, every day, like this has been hand off to the next person, Derek, our interim head of marketing. But we have this, like all these group chats, 150 of them, where they're like, can you amplify, hit this, hit this, hit this. And then the one time we're like, hey, can you guys all help us amplify this one post? They'll do it. And so without doing anything, we'll already have 100 comments right off the bat on LinkedIn. And then the LinkedIn algorithm pushes it just for that one post. And if it's a really big announcement, we'll do LinkedIn automation. We'll say like, can you guys post this? So then they'll just share it. Like Series A announcement, they'll actually share it, or they'll reshare it. And then for that announcement, maybe we had like 30, 40 reshares. We got to over 150,000 impressions and over 1,000 likes and engagements. And we've done that like 3 or 4 times already. So we've done a pretty good job, like just getting ourselves out there in the LinkedIn community, off of essentially no budget. And then now then we have to figure out other methods, and that's what we're doing right now.
Very interesting. Tell me about AI agents. How far are we away from having these outbound SDRs and AEs generate leads and close the transactions for us without involvement of humans?
Yeah, I think that this is a race. Yeah, this like at the end of the day, all these companies are kind of converging on the same thing. Um, maybe AI is a little bit further removed, but in my opinion, like this role of sales development, you can kind of collapse it into a lot of things that machines can do. And so what we're trying to do is intent-based signal. If there's a signal that a person is in the market to buy something, that is without like the question of when versus what versus who. The when is the most important question. We're just trying to solve for that. And then if you know when, the next thing you have to do is act upon it, because intent without action, it doesn't mean anything. So we're trying to solve for the when and then the what. This is already being automated. Then it's the targeting the who. That can also be automated. Then it's what do you say. The what do you say part is probably more of the AI finesse, the nuance, like how do you make it personalized? But everything leading up to them can just be classically engineered. When this happens, then do this, then do that, then do this, then do that. And then AI can help out with like which signals are actually important, because you have maybe 1,000 signals and not all of them convert into real pipeline. So the AI can help identify like there's that. So we can kind of proxy. You don't need like a singularity AI to do that. It's like using a chainsaw to cut a cake. You can sort of break it down into this like flows. These flows, like these are all the top 100 signals, and these are all the people we want to target. This is our ICP. This is all the criteria, segment, segment, segment. When these things happen, do that. That's why we call it orchestration. And the personalization bit, which I don't think is actually that important, is what you say afterwards. If you can answer when they're hungry and then who you're supposed to talk to, then the what you say actually doesn't really matter as much. You can just kind of send them a template, in my opinion. It's almost fine. And the key thing is you need to be first. First, credibility. We can give good templates out. That's what we do for our customers. But yeah, there are companies out there that are trying to create the singularity. Like Six Sense's CEO started creating a new company that's potentially doing that. So it's going to happen at some point. But before it gets there, I think there's like all these little baby steps that'll get us basically 90% there without needing singularity AI SDRs.
Nowadays, how do you go with your day-to-day routine? What habits do you have in there to make you a better and more productive co-founder?
Yeah. So I think there's like this book that's going around, 10x is easier than 2x. I'm sure a lot of people have read that. People talk about it anyways, but I got our company to read it because it makes a lot of sense. It's essentially like 10, like getting from 1 to 10, it should be easier than getting from 1 to 2, because if you go from 1 to 2, you just work harder. And that was the fallacy that we all fell for, which is, oh, we need to grow from this to that. Well, let's just do what we were doing before and then just work twice as hard. Then we should be able to double it. But if you're forced to go from 1 to 10, like what you're doing from 1 to 2 to get there from 1 to 2, like that's not going to work. So you have to fundamentally change how you think about the problem. And so one example of this is like I used to manually pull together all my lead lists or implement it for all my customers, or all these things basically. Like I used to do it all by hand, thinking like if I just worked harder on the weekends, that means that we're going to get more stuff done. And like coming from a finance background, I talk about this with our other investment banking person. We were just like, if we just all worked 100 hours a week, then we would get twice as much done, and we would be twice as far as a company. But when you need to go 10x farther as a company, then you can't just use hours as your crutch. And so maybe like a recent example since I moved to customer success was like our product is pretty complicated, and we had 4 or 5 calls of onboarding. But now we just have 1 call. And so if you can't get everything done in the first call, then it's not going to happen ever. You can't chase down these customers. So like everything gets done on the first call. And the first thing that happens is the whole CS team and the sales team was like, that's not possible. You can't, because a million different reasons. You need approval, blah, blah, whatever. But if you think about like, what if you could get it, if you could incentivize it, you waive the onboarding fee. It's like, hey, it's $1,000. But if you onboard everything in 1 day and you get time to value in 2 days, then it's free. Like, what if you could make that happen? Now we've made that happen, and that's a 10x move. And there are other 10x move examples, but just thinking in terms of 10x, 10x, then you get time back because you scale yourself. You're like, I don't need to do that monotonous stuff. I just need to find more 10x things and just focus on that. Find more 10x, outsource the work. Find more 10x, outsource the work. Find more 10x, outsource the work. That's my flow. And I work probably 8 to 10 hours a day. I used to work like 12 to 15, but a lot of it was just mundane stuff that I realized wasn't as useful in moving the needle. I get my weekends, I go dancing, I clear my mind, I go driving, I think more. It's healthy.
The shoestring budget thing, do you feel it's an advantage or a curse?
It was out of necessity because I never done marketing before, and I was too afraid to spend budget. So I wasn't willing to spend it on ads, SDRs, or any of that stuff. And then I just started following people who did a really good job of it. Folks that I admire, like Hockey Stacks, Obey, Durrani. I like what they did. I like Todd Clauser's, what he did with Lavender. Um, and yeah, just some of these folks who've really made a big impact with such little budget. I mean, I think Obey had like less than 10,000, like $4,000 a month to spend, and then he created like a huge media brand for the company. I kind of wanted to do something similar to that. Um, and I also felt that the way that people buy is different. It's not so much like if you saw 20 ads, you're more likely to buy. It's more like eh, what people do, what companies do, isn't that differentiated apart from each other. And it's more like the credibility behind the company. So who's saying that you're going to deliver on your promise? Oh, this influencer is saying it. Scott Lisa's saying that. Chris Walker is saying that. That's meaningful. And that doesn't necessarily require you to spend $50,000 on ads. Just them saying it publicly and endorsing you is worth a lot, but it's hard to measure. And so we went down that route. Irrespective of cost, it was actually just more effective for us at our stage.
Tell me about that Magnify acquisition.
Yeah, the Magnify acquisition is kind of like a baby Apollo. It's like they're Apollo competitor. They're based out of Israel, and we just wanted to make sure that we were accruing our own data asset. And so we are trying to synthesize all the best data, all the best intent data together. So it's like a turnkey plug and play. You have an intent-based orchestration platform right from the get-go. Like you don't need to stitch together 50 different tools, SDRs like flip between 3 different toggles. It's just running. One onboarding call, you turn it on, it's running. And we wanted to make sure that we had quality data. So having an Apollo database meant that when these companies come to your site, we can get the best data, and then now we have this team and this company to help us find the best contacts, and so we're not beholden to any one vendor. And this company is essentially going to be like, you know, the intent data company. We're just building our own internal data assets so that once we get larger, we're not beholden to any one single vendor.
How does one become the click-through king?
So this is tough because we talk about this a lot. It's hard to be number one for long just because of AI. And when you think about what companies like Clearbit and Apollo and ZoomInfo do, a lot of the information they're scraping is all public domain. Eventually, ChatGPT, or you know, just based off the rate of improvements in ChatGPT itself, you can scrape the internet and then pull all the email addresses, all the contacts, scrape the domains, and it's just going to happen. So they're going to constantly have a refreshing database just by nature of what that product's supposed to do. And when you see the writing on the wall, like, okay, fine, Clearbit gets acquired by HubSpot, you can start to see some consolidation in the space. And it's hard to compete, but what we think is flexibility is enhanced utility. And so instead of trying to be extremely good in like one area, like one subset, we're gonna try to integrate with as many tools as possible and sort of be that API middleware layer. ZoomInfo is trying to create this all-in-one orchestration platform through acquisition, which has its fallacies because you don't fully integrate, and then there's data that lives in silos, and it's hard for the systems to talk to each other. Apollo is trying to create it in-house. So that's got sequencing, it's got like website de-anonymization. If you notice us, we're trying to combine all these different pieces together because we know that people like using different tools. You like Outreach, some people like SalesLoft, some people like Drift, Intercom. And then if you plug it in together, but it has the same effect, then you're stitching together all the tools, you're breaking down the data silos, and then you're still creating that orchestration layer on top that allows you to have the AI and automation going forward. Yes. And that's how we think we can stay ahead.
Last question, you're structured to them. Here you're tagging a bunch of companies. Seems we get like more engagement when doing that. Do you have a template or a structure that gets you that much engagement?
There's no structure like you have to say this, but the key things is you need to have a hook, like a hook that reels them in. And so one of the ones that did well was like I went from CTO to head of sales to head of marketing to head of customers. And that's an interesting hook. Or you know, like so whatever it is to get the hook going, like you need to pay attention to this. That's one. LinkedIn seems to like long form content. So people tend to write longer form and you want to have spaces in between each. Uh, Try to be lighter on the hashtags. Sometimes people go a little bit overboard. LinkedIn looks at it as spam. One of the key things is just think what would LinkedIn consider to be content that it would want to promote? Like they're pushing the algorithm more towards useful content from experts who can answer questions of people who are looking for those questions answered. So it's less meant to be, hey, congratulations for getting a promotion. Like half of LinkedIn is about that. It's just people congratulating each other. And then one day LinkedIn folks just looked at the algorithm and the feed and they were like, we don't want to be this. We want to be where experts are connected with the people who have questions about their expertise. So just make sure your profile, that LinkedIn, if it scrapes you, is like, oh, this person is an expert in lead gen. This person is an expert in marketing. Therefore, when there's a question about marketing, that post that did really well might just show up in the feed of the person who's looking for it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
So
does.
long, yeah, yeah.
What do you think of Chilian Yang and using humor in business?
Oh, I think it's necessary. Yeah, I think B2B is always like 10 years lagged. And that's why you see like LinkedIn getting into the feed game a little bit later. And everything goes through a shelf life. So like TikTok Reels, LinkedIn hasn't been rewarding that, but they're going to start rewarding that. They're going to start pushing video content. So everything in B2B is just 10 years behind. And so doing things like Chili and Yang, which is like a caricature of what you're not supposed to do in B2B SaaS, sales and marketing, I think is necessary. It draws fun on it. And like half the time, like 95% of the time, your target market isn't even in market to buy your product. So you need to entertain them and build a brand with them in some other way, but it's still related to what you do. And so Chili and Yang is just one example of that.
Alan, thank you so much for today. Where can people find out more about you?
You can find out more about us by visiting warmly.ai. We have a media page, so we put out tons of really fun content there, and then you can connect with me on LinkedIn.